Shells by the seashore. Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3. A B C D E F G H I J K L M N O P. All good? Sounds good. How's everything here, guys? Five.
Yeah, I know. That says more than a comment.
Pie chart of questions to statements. You had to change everything. Yeah. Hot corridor. Oh. Oh. You know, it's how he has avoided. And not super exciting thing. He still has barely addressed He also has passport for first time. Yeah. He's ripped the bulletproof too. Yeah. Everything that she's done and said and all that stuff that's controversial, she's never got questioned. It makes her bulletproof. Yeah. He stands there and takes only one shot. Did you see what she did with the press releases? That's about it. It's kind of like overkill. Well, they don't, but it's also silly because the Watertown Fire Department grant, I can't see about that anymore. All of the little opera research people already have every statement she's ever talked about. Just as conservative outlets have every fucking Jeffries thing. They're going to send a Cameron follower to where they downloaded the releases. Once you delete them from the website? Well, pretty effectively too. All the backdoor stuff doesn't work either. Really hard. All of them.
Heads up.
Good morning. House Democrats have said from the very beginning of this Congress that we will always put people over politics. Our caucus knows that there are challenges at the southern border, and we're willing to address them in a bipartisan way with additional resources, technology, and manpower. We also know that we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform. I joked last time that at this podium that the House and Senate Republicans need to get on the same page when one chamber is negotiating with Secretary Mayorkas while the other chamber is leading his impeachment inquiries. Well, they got their marching orders. MAGA Republicans in the House and Senate are walking away from a bipartisan deal that would strengthen border security, support Israel, and help Ukraine stop Putin's march through Europe, because Donald Trump ordered them to do so. In this shameful display of partisanship, they are abdicating their responsibility to solve problems on behalf of the American people. Even Mitch McConnell has surrendered to Vladimir Putin, and he's surrendered to Donald Trump. The floor speeches, the photo ops, the constant attacks from Republicans were always done in bad faith. And now everyone can see that this was never about securing the border, this was never about migrants, and this was never about protecting our country. Just like the baseless impeachments and everything else the MAGA Republicans have pretended to care about, it has always been about helping Donald Trump become president again. I want to be very clear. House Democrats will fight with everything we have to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. At the caucus meeting that we just had, Chairman Aguilar recognized the 3 U.S. service members who were killed and the many who were wounded. So our entire caucus stands in support of our amazing military and the families that were affected by this unjustified strike by Iranian-backed militants. Now, in terms of the economy, we had some amazing news this month. Earlier this month, the S&P 500 hit a record high. Last week, the Dow Jones exceeded 38,000 for the first time in U.S. history. Just yesterday, the Dow Jones set another record high, closing at 38,333. And guess who took note of that? Donald Trump. Donald Trump is claiming credit for their increases in the stock market. And why is he doing that? He's doing that because he realizes the economy is improving, that Bidenomics is working, and he can't do anything about it. So he's trying to take credit for this growing economy. And if you look at the numbers, the economy is doing pretty well. We had GDP growth beyond expectations. We have a 2-year unemployment rate that is basically the best in over half a century. We have wages that are rising. And if we continue to do what Democrats are doing, which is focus on putting people over politics and lowering costs, creating jobs, and growing middle class, then our best days are still yet to come. What are Republicans doing? They're trying to ban abortions, and they're focused on stupid stuff, like impeaching a cabinet member. It is so ridiculous that even the witness that they routinely call, Jonathan Turley, that is a Republican witness that they call at all these different hearings, himself said there is no, quote, cognizable basis, end quote, for this impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. So the Republicans are focused on issues that no one in America really cares about, and I hope the American public tells them, stop this sham impeachment and let's work together on trying to make our economy even better. And with that, I yield back.
Questions? Scott?
There seem to be some Democrats who are uncomfortable with what they're hearing in those Senate negotiations, tightening amnesty, some of the preferred Republican policies. How confident are you that members of your caucus will get behind whatever they can pass out of the Senate?
Well, we need to see what that language looks like. We haven't seen any legislative text. We've talked about that before. In immigration policy, it's incredibly difficult, and these words matter. And so we want to make sure that the language is as tight as it can be. But let's be very clear. I mean, House Democrats support changes. We support surging resources through the President's National Security Supplemental to Customs and Border Patrol. We support surging resources to ICE. We support hiring more agents down at the border. We also support the rule of law. And we think that these things are not opposed to each other. So we want to see exactly what the legislation says with respect to asylum and with respect to some of the other changes that they have. We take the president and his team at their word when it comes to parole authority. We think it can help, and we think that the president should have this parole authority. Those are things that unite the Democratic caucus, and those are things that we're pleased to support. Now, contrast that with the other side. I mean, clearly this is just about politics. I mean, just from this podium moments ago, the speaker himself said that, you know, this is a non-starter. He doesn't want to bring this to the table. A bipartisan solution on the issue that they have been talking about for a year. They don't want to bring a legislative solution. And now they say that they believe in executive authority, right? They believe in President Biden using executive authority to fix the southern border. They spent the last 13 months having votes on reducing the president's executive authority through all of these, CRAs and these measures. So, look, this is chaos, dysfunction, and extremism at its best within the House Republican Conference. We know that, and we will spend the next many months here talking to the American public about what that means for them in the future as well. Nick.
Do you have any comment on the reports that Congressman Cory Bush is under federal investigation?
I don't have any comments on that. That's something for the Justice Department. I know what you guys have put out and tweeted. That's all I have. I don't have anything more. Max?
So you haven't spoken, no one from leadership that you're aware of has spoken to Congresswoman Bush in the past day or so about this?
I haven't talked to her about it, yeah. Michael?
Some New York Republicans are frustrated that fault deductions aren't in the tax bill that could be coming to the floor. Some of them have threatened to tank rules, similar to some of the House conservatives. Can you just speak to the weaponization of the rule this Congress and what that means for Democrats continuously coming to pass these bills with your votes, the CRs, the debt ceiling, this tax bill perhaps, some of the appropriations bills may end up coming under suspension. Can you just speak to the what that means that the majority can't pass these rules to get bills to the floor and rely on minority votes to pass legislation? Yeah, I mean, it means chaos and dysfunction are the norm on the Republican side, and that anything that they want to do in a meaningful way is going to have 2/3 votes, which means Democrats are going to have to play an outsized role in providing votes to govern. To pass continuing resolutions, to fund government, to avoid the debt limit. Those are things that we have been willing to advance votes and support because we believe in governing. And clearly, there is an element within the Republican conference that doesn't believe in voting yes on anything. They don't believe in governing. They don't believe in passing meaningful legislation to help Americans. And so that's where we are. But we stand ready and willing to work in a bipartisan way. The tax bill that you talked about, we'll see, right? There seems to be some conflicting reports on whether this is going to come to the floor. Sometimes the speaker decides to bring things to the floor, and sometimes elements within his conference prohibit him from doing so. We know that it passed in a bipartisan way. It's not the tax bill that we would have drawn up or the tax bill that we will draw up when Chairman Neal is holding the gavel again. But this is something that it meaningfully advances the ball for families in this country, and that's why a majority and most Democrats voted for it out of committee. We'll see if this comes up, but clearly this will be a suspension vote, and clearly this is going to be something that Democrats are relied upon in order to vote for if we want it to succeed.
The New York Republicans, many of them ran on one issue to fix the SALT issue. They literally had one job and they failed. Shows how incompetent and weak and ineffective that they are. It also shows me that the Republican caucus has largely given up on trying to protect these vulnerable New York Republicans in New York. And so that is the takeaway from that story.
Do you expect all Democrats, or roughly all Democrats, to be present next week for this Mayorkas impeachment vote? And do you also expect them to stay unified against it?
That's a question that we'll spend some time on in the next few days. I think it was clear yesterday in the vote. I think there were more Democrats who voted on the floor last night than Republicans. Republicans don't have a majority. That's what we're talking about here, and the ability to govern. Sometimes they might have more individuals physically present on the House floor, but you just never know. It's going to be important for House Democrats to show up and to be united. We believe this is a sham impeachment. This is just the only thing that binds Republicans together is, impeachments and censures. They don't want to do anything else. And so this is something that brings them all together. It's important that we show up. It's important that we're here. Things come up in people's lives. We get that. But the most important thing we can do is to exercise our ability to vote, to use our voting cards, to vote against the extremism and the chaos that Republicans are hurling us toward.
So just to follow up, are you anticipating any defections from your caucus, or do you think everybody's going to stay together on this?
Based on what we've seen in the committee, I can't imagine anybody from a precedent standpoint voting for this. But I haven't talked with the majority of the members, and we'll have those discussions. And that's a question for Whip Clark, but something that we'll spend some time on in the next few days. Clearly.
There's been a lot of criticism, especially from Republicans, of how President Biden has handled aggression by Iranian proxies over the last few days, especially in light of 3 U.S. service members dying in Jordan. What's your response to that, and what do you think should come of any response to this attack?
The president has, first of all, as the vice chair mentioned, we did touch on this in our caucus meeting this morning, and our condolences go out to the families, and our thoughts are with them. The administration and the president has said that he will respond. There should be a response to the killing of soldiers, and we expect that will happen. We support the administration and what they say. In a time of their choosing, they will respond. But that's not anything that we're going to telegraph or coordinate to the other side. But it's something that we believe in the President's national security advisors, and we believe that he will respond and support that. Chad?
Going back to the Mayorkas impeachment here and potential Democratic unanimity and opposition against this here, what about Democrats from marginal districts, swing districts, giving them the ability to say, look, we see that the border is a problem. We know that is an issue that the Republicans are definitely running on this fall. We see it increasingly showing up in importance in the heartland. It is an issue important to voters. What about those who might say, look, I might not agree on the principle, but this is a good vote politically for me? Would some of those Democrats be given that latitude and devote their conscience on something like this?
I would just encourage people. This is something that is reserved. It's been done, once over the last 100 years. High crimes and misdemeanors is a pretty high threshold when it comes to impeachments. This Congress and our Democratic caucus has spent some time talking about this issue. This is not just an academic exercise for those of us who lived through the Trump years, clearly. But to do that for a cabinet official is unprecedented. And so, politics aside, let's solve the issue. I talked about it at the top. I mean, if we're serious about border security, if we're serious about immigration reform, there are ways and outlets to do that. We should talk about what we stand for, what we believe, what will meaningfully help and improve the border. But that is completely different than sham impeachments. Again, this is done just from a political standpoint because Republicans don't have any solutions. House Republicans are paralyzed. They don't support bipartisan reform that's happening in the Senate. So this is the only thing that they can hang their hat on. This is the only thing that unites them related to the border. So we'll see how many votes they have. But I would caution any Democrat who is thinking about supporting this that this is just playing into the Republican extremism that brings them all together.
So what you said made it seem like the deal negotiating in the Senate is doomed. Is it? And if so, what happens to the Ukraine piece? Do you see a chance of passing that separately?
Look, we don't know. There was an opportunity. The first act that the speaker himself did was to pair aid to Israel with dramatic cuts here in the House. He had an opportunity to advance Ukraine and Israel support, and he did not. Right now, I don't know what those prospects look like. The United States Senate seems to be, incapable of advancing that. And Mitch McConnell is listening to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump doesn't want to help Ukraine. So until House and Senate Republicans come back to reality, put our national security interests first, we're going to have some concerns, and we're going to have to work and do everything we can to make sure that we support the national security priorities that the administration has defined, which includes, Israel, which includes aid to Israel, and includes investments in our southern border. That's what we support, and that's what we stand ready to work with in a bipartisan way.
Sure. It is completely absurd for a number of Republicans to be opposed to a bill they have not seen. How can you oppose something that you don't even know what is in the text? And what that tells me is they are not interested in governing. They're not interested in finding solutions. It is a chaotic, dysfunctional, extreme governing majority, and the American people are going to see that.
Speaker Johnson mentioned that one of the details rumored in the Senate negotiations that he was opposing, and thus thinking that the bill would be dead on arrival, was a alleged 5,000 cap on crossings before the border was to be shut. Do you have any comments on that? Are you willing to consider quotas on illegal crossings?
Look, we are willing to discuss substantive changes that help provide order at the border, that help our asylum process, that surge resources to Customs and Border Patrol and ICE to make sure that they have the resources to respond. Those are the things. There is no legislative text that is public that we've seen. I've seen some of the public reporting. Let's wait until we have this text and have a meaningful conversation. But also, just a reminder that, fleeing, using the asylum process is something that has been done time and time again. People are fleeing, these conditions, and they have a right to declare asylum at ports of entries and between ports of entries. Should it be done in a way that provides, order? Absolutely. And we are willing to engage and to have that conversation and to make sure that this is done in a safe and secure way. And we stand ready to work in a bipartisan way, which is the only way that border solutions will happen and immigration reform can happen, is done in a bipartisan way. And Republicans, as the vice chair mentioned, Republicans have shot this down time and time again. They don't want to work in a bipartisan way. They don't want to govern. They don't want to provide solutions. They want this on the political side. They want to run on immigration, and the American people will see through it, that Democrats are willing to engage and work and find common ground, and Republicans just want to weaponize this and use this to put Donald Trump back in the White House.
Last question. There's more than 300,000 people crossed over in December, record numbers. You mentioned that the asylum system has always been used. Is there something that has changed that we're seeing these?
Well, let's be honest about this. During the last few months of the Trump administration, we had some of the largest numbers at the southern border. So let's be real about what the numbers look like and look at multiple administrations because this is something that has been going on for some time. And should there be reform, that's something that the Senate is looking at. And as soon as we have text, we'll reflect a little bit more on things we like and things we don't within the legislation. Paul.
Do you still have that shell discharge mission? Is that's still sort of active, the one you did about a year ago? And if so, is there one thing that you all think about that could possibly be used that you might get 6, 8, 9 Republicans to cross over on at some point this year?
Well, we'll see. We maintain that we're the side that wants to govern. If there are folks on the other side of the aisle who want to meet us halfway and govern, we're always willing to engage and have discussions. To my knowledge, there are vehicles that are available from a discharge petition perspective. We reserve the right to think about that when it comes to meaningful solutions that will help advance the interests of the American people. That's what we are sent here to do. That's what we want to do. If there are Republicans who are willing to come along with us, then we'll engage. But that's something that we can't speculate on at this point. But we do have that ability in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.